The Watermelon Vendor. "Now I love you twice as much," I told her. "Now I have 2 hearts with which to love you," she answered. Then I left for work. That morning, I read in the newspaper that a farmer from Shikoku invented a way to make square watermelons. When it is very small, the farmer places the watermelon in a glass box. As it grows, the young watermelon starts to become a prisoner. The watermelon's beautiful curves turn into a cube. In the end, thousands of watermelons of the same shape and size end up in the supermarket. A single one of these watermelons is worth 300 round watermelons, like the ones I sell. If I cultivated square watermelons, I would certainly not always be chasing the watermelons that slip and fall and go rolling down the streets. And maybe I would have lots of money. But this is how I like my watermelons, round and curvy. I can imagine how sad a piece of square watermelon must be. I like how my watermelons smile, for they bring joy to those days when no one buys any. All this talk about watermelons reminds me of the story of Peter Square. His story begins as the story of any child, when a long-tailed sperm entered a round ovum. If ova were square, Peter Square would not exist, and neither would any other children. Peter floated happily in his mother's warm belly like the stars float in the round sky of summer nights. But when Peter Square was born, he was placed in a glass incubator, like the watermelons in Shikoku. "Why was he born deformed?" asked his father, distressed to see him so round. Later, Peter's life would not change very much, as he would live in an eternal succession of square spaces. Peter quickly learned that he could use a rectangle to turn on a square, which would entertain him. Later at school, Peter learned in a square classroom, sitting in front of a square blackboard and drawing in a graph paper notebook. The pages divided into small squares. Although Peter Square was born in Squareville, everything in his life was not square. There were marvelous round things like soccer balls and bicycle tires. But soon, these things would start to lose importance for him. One day, Peter Square began to notice a terrible transformation. His hands had started to grow corners. Later, his head began to take the shape of a cube, until his whole body had been transformed into squares. After studying for many years, he received a square diploma, just like many other youth that day. Peter Square found work in the office of a dice factory, where he worked in a cubicle and punched in and out each day with a square card. Peter learned that with hard work, he could have a rectangular card with which he could buy lots of things, like square watermelons. The people of Squareville really have a strange obsession with square things. Peter Square finally met the love of his life, and he signed square papers in order to love her. "Honey, I think you're sick. Look at the strange shape of your stomach," he said worriedly to his wife one day. But he didn't know that he was going to become a father. What if our child is born with curves? They anxiously wondered each night. But they didn't know that their seeds, like watermelon seeds, will always produce round humans and round watermelons. That is how the years passed, trapped in little boxes just like the days on the calendar. One day, when Peter Square was very old, he sat in front of a rectangular window to try to see the roundness of the world. But it was already too late. He tried to make his old ball roll, but it would not spin. The tires in his bicycles were like two frames anchored to the ground. Peter cried, and a small spherical tear came out from the corner of his eye, a tear that was salty, like the round sea. When Peter Square died, a Square document certified that he had, in fact, died. For his burial, he was placed in a wooden box. It is said that on that night a full moon rose, larger than any Squareville had ever seen. I like to play the guitar on full moon nights. I think that if the guitar did not have any curves, its sound would not be so beautiful. And if the moon was square, the stars would not dare to shine. There are simply things in life that cannot be square. I know that when my daughter is born, she will be added to the national population statistics as a little square. But the day my daughter is born, I will feel a love that will tell me with certainty that today our circle has grown.